Welcome to Making Peace Visible, the podcast about peace, conflict, and the media. I'm your host, Jamil Simon. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is a controversial figure on the world stage. Many on the right admire his commitments to Christian nationalism, traditional family values, and the government's crackdown on migration from the Middle East. Pro-democracy advocates within Hungary, in the EU, and around the globe decry his consolidation of power and erosion of Hungary's democratic institutions. In the United States, critics correctly point out that Donald Trump is following Orbán's lead, especially in his second term. His party, Fidesz, was elected in 2010. Then, Orbán began dismantling the country's democracy, slowly, quietly, and by and large without violence. A new documentary film, Democracy Noir, charts the rise of authoritarianism in Hungary through the eyes of three resistors. For this episode, I'm pleased to be joined by Connie Field. She's the director of Democracy Noir. Connie is an award-winning documentary filmmaker whose films have focused on civil rights, human rights, and social justice. Her work has been broadcast in 30 countries. Connie, welcome to Making Peace Visible.
Thank you.
Why don't we start by telling us, what's your impetus in making the film?
Well, I made the film because my husband is Hungarian, actually. And so we've been to Hungary almost every year since 1990. So we've kind of been watching the country change over all this time. The focus for this film came actually in 2014 when we were visiting one of the main squares in Budapest, and we saw 4 empty pillars surrounded by police and all these demonstrators. So we were curious about what was going on. So I found out that people were demonstrating against Orban rewriting history, which again is an authoritarian playbook. And he was trying to present a statue which showed Hungary under, the big foot of Germany during World War II and how much it suffered under Germany as opposed to being allies with Germany, which is the truth. So people were able to stop that statue for being finished for 6 months. And one of the things they did that was really significant, they made a counter sort of display in front of the statue, which showed the historical truth of what happened. And to this day, that display still exists. So everyone who comes to Budapest, who goes to this famous square, sees it to this day. And people have kept it up all these years. And that's where I met Nico, the young nurse in the film. I met her at that demonstration, and we became Facebook friends. And I just kept following everything she was doing sort of for years. So that's really kind of what started it.
What years does the film cover? And how many years did you film in Hungary?
Well, it basically covers from the beginning of Orbán's second term, which is 2010.
Right.
He was in power from 1998 to 2002. He lost the election. He was very depressed. Then he went around the country, started building his Fidesz Party and finding a constituency for himself that would keep him in power, much like what Trump did. Okay, Trump is pro-abortion, but he's adopting what this constituency, who he represents, wants. And Orbán did a lot of the same thing. Orban used to be a liberal. Orban went to Oxford on a scholarship provided by George Soros, who he now vilifies as the big boogeyman. And that's being taken up now by the right in our country. I mean, it's unbelievable. The copycat nature of it is extraordinary.
Well, you decided to tell the story largely through the eyes of 3 women. You mentioned one of them a minute ago, but for people who haven't seen the film, briefly introduce the 3 main characters.
Okay, well, Nico is a nurse, and she works in the public hospital system, which is really decaying under Orban. She also comes from a very interesting family. Her mother is pro-Orban. Her mother's partner tried to get Nico to enlist in this almost neo-Nazi party called Jobbik when she was a teenager, but she went kind of in the opposite direction. And Timea became a member of parliament in 2010, exactly that same year that Orban won his second victory. They've carried on ever since. And she basically was trying to fight for sustainability and human rights and bring all of those things to Hungary, and found herself instead just trying to fight for democracy. One of the things that is a problem in Hungary, and it's kind of the Achilles heel to the story, is that in their new constitution of 1990, coming out from under communism, they have in their constitution that any party, if they get 2/3 majority in parliament, can change the constitution. Why they did that, I don't know, but that's what happened. So Orban got in. He was the first to get 2/3. He changed the constitution completely by 2011. And I found Timmy in the fall of 2021 because I knew I was going to follow the campaign of 2022. I realized I must have a journalist as part of this story to get this, because I really wanted the story told from the Hungarian perspective. So I interviewed journalists over Zoom and ended up choosing Babette. And Babette was enormously important to my making this film. She got kicked out of various Orban TV stations over the years. She's won numerous prizes. Now she's working for Partisan, which is a internet news station that's earned lots of awards. What happened to the media in Hungary is it migrated to the internet as one by one, everything got taken over by Orban and Orban's cronies.
Well, your film covers what happened to a major Hungarian newspaper when the staff found themselves locked out of the building one day in 2016. Can you describe what happened there?
Well, what happened in Hungary is the first thing, obviously, he took over was public TV stations. Okay, that's from the get-go. Then the method that he used, he would starve out papers by disallowing advertisements. Okay? He'd make a rule that would disallow, so their money would go down. He had cronies, okay, who were loyal to him that would buy up the newspapers. The government did not buy up all the newspapers. His cronies did, like Larry Ellison is about to do with a lot of our major media. It was the same thing that happened in Hungary. So he did this bit by bit and also took over the private TV stations. Orban's crony takes it over and then ideologically completely changes it.
Yeah. How did Orban's allied media use language to create a cohesive narrative around his politics?
Well, basically, it's like all you hear is his point of view. All you hear is his thoughts. It'd be like if in this country, all anybody heard was Trump or Stephen Miller or J.D. Vance, that's all people would hear. The opposition was not allowed access to the media. I show in the film, in 2018, a huge demonstration all over Hungary. And the members of parliament, the people who are in opposition are sitting in like protesters at the TV station demanding to get their voices heard. So, they were just completely shut out.
Yeah. In the film, we follow a reporter, Babette, on a reporting trip to the rural areas. And she says the opposition doesn't know the voters, and neither do we, and that's why I'm going to the countryside. She said she wanted to get out of the Budapest bubble. Do you think Hungarian left and the news media bear some responsibility for being out of touch with the rural voters?
Well, it's complicated. Let me tell you my experience in working with Timia through her campaign. Okay, the first thing I asked some of her campaign people is, why aren't you out in the countryside? It's like I told them, look, I live in California. I spend all my money in Georgia, okay? Not California, because we don't need to. They didn't need to as much in Budapest. But the problem is the way their system works is your party, you not only have people who are running from a specific district like Timea was, you also get people that the party can appoint, your party. And how many people your party appoints depends on the percentage of votes it gets. So they want to concentrate all of their effort because they get the most votes in Budapest. That's what prevents them from going out. Okay, and that's true of all the parties. It's like a trap. Because I was kind of wondering, why aren't you, just all out there? That's why they weren't all out there. It's a big reason. They're trapped within the confines of their own political system, basically.
Social media has been a detriment to democracy in many ways because it helps false rumors and hate spread so quickly. But in Hungary, where the legacy media institutions are repeating the state's narrative, has social media become a meaningful alternative news source?
Well, in the same way it is here. And it's not only alternative, it's a way that people organize. I mean, it's not just the right wing that uses social media. We all do, okay? It amplifies our voices. It brings us together with our communities. It's also a source of news. I show Timea on Facebook, trying to tell people to all come down to the Leggett to stop what was going on there and come down and make democracy work. I mean, they all use all of that. Yeah. So it's a double-edged sword. Social media has been extremely useful to the opposition in Budapest.
Right. And speaking about the independent media outlets like the one Babette works for, is independent news media sustainable in Hungary? I mean, how is it funded?
Partisan actually has started getting, just like our Pacifica network, the people who listen to it fund it. They also get international money from various foundations in the world that are set up to fund open journalism, of which there's a lot of them. So I think it's a combination of those two.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it is viable.
Yeah, it's very much viable. And when Orban almost put a law in that would prevent, any international money funding anything in Hungary, he was going to do this. It's what happened in Russia, shut down all the NGOs in Russia. But he didn't quite do it. And I think one Achilles heel of that one is that they get so much funding from the EU. The government gets so much funding from the EU. It would have to cut off its own funding to be able to do that, So, though I'm sure he can probably come up with a fiddling of the law that would allow the EU money to come in, but the other stuff not. But he hasn't done that. And one thing I do want to say that I think is really important is that one of the things that I am showing in the film, which is one reason I chose to do it the way I did it, is that there's been continuously a culture of resistance in Hungary throughout all of this. And what that culture of resistance has done, it's not like they were able to influence Orban, but what it has done is build solidarity among the community. And they're always really large, these demonstrations. So that, you're not alone in what you're thinking. All of these people are here. It's so important. And what it means, when something comes on the horizon that offers hope, everybody's there. And that's exactly what's been happening. Okay, there is a new party that had its roots in the countryside. It's being led actually by somebody who quit Orban's party, Peter Magyar. It is now outpolling Fidesz for a first time. It's enormously hopeful.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happened, Orban banned Pride Parade. It was against the law to have a Pride Parade. So, you know what happened? On Pride Day, between 100,000 and 200,000 Hungarians marched for Pride, led by the mayor of Budapest. And Orban could do nothing.
That's great. There's power in numbers, right?
Yeah, no, there are. And also what's interesting too is Orban has not had to use violence in anything he's done, okay? And it's going to be interesting to see what happens if he gets really threatened. Probably what he'll be able to do is manipulate the election laws so much that even though he's out polling and outvoting everything, he'll still win the election. Okay, I'm sure he'll go for that. But I really don't know whether he wants to see himself and his legacy be a violent dictator. I actually don't think so.
I thought it was interesting that what the election monitoring group that evaluated the 2022 election said. I mean, they said that the election wasn't completely fair because Hungarian people didn't have access to unbiased media. I mean, from your experience working in Hungary, do you think it'll be possible for criticism of Orban's regime to reach the public?
Well, it's less that than a really strong alternative. Okay, the opposition has not been able to put that together successfully all this time. One of the biggest party in the opposition is called DK, and it was run by the person who used to be the Hungarian prime minister from 2002 to 2010, which had a lot of problems in that government, lots of corruption, and they happened to be there in 2008 when economically the whole world was sinking. So they got blamed for that. So that was the biggest party with the biggest head who'd been that prime minister who'd been completely discounted. Okay, so it was a huge, mistake that gave them no real leadership. I think Peter Magyar is casting a bigger footprint than any of them have done without the history of the baggage. So there's, potential hope in that.
Right. But you think his message can cut through then?
He's out in the countryside.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time in the countryside.
Yeah, and he's getting big crowds from what I understand.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. But, your film points out that there are more than one way a democratic country can become authoritarian. I mean, how would you describe the type of authoritarianism that's taken root in Hungary?
Well, people have come to define it as competitive authoritarianism, which doesn't make any sense to me. No, it's basically Orban used democracy to undermine democracy is what he did. Okay? He took the first problem in their little, house of democracy, which I told you was their constitution. Okay, and completely undermined everything else. In 2011, he just laid everything down. He took over the courts. He took over the major media, all of those things, okay? And what he does is he fiddles with democracy, as Babette calls it. He hacks democracy. He does things in Hungary which are really amazing. There's a Hungarian diaspora that surrounds Hungary because Hungary used to be much, much bigger until World War I. And there's people of Hungarian descent in Slovakia, in Romania, in Serbia, etc., in the Ukraine. He allows all those Hungarians to vote in the Hungarian election. And he gives lots of them grants and whatever, and they all vote for Orban, and they can all vote by mail. So then on the other side, in Western Europe, where a lot of young people have gone, like 800,000, 900,000 young Hungarians are working in Western Europe. So if you're one of those and you're in England and you're working in Manchester, you have to go down to London to the Hungarian embassy and vote in person. That's the only way you can vote. And of course, they closed down the embassy at 3:00 that day. Okay, that's what he does. The other thing he does, he did this in 2018, he does this kind of voter tourism. He changes the law and he says, you can vote anywhere you want to. So what he does, there's a system of gerrymandering, okay, which he's done, but also he did a thing, and Timea talks about this winner take all. If Orban, Fidesz gets 51% in an area, he gets 100% of those votes. Okay, so what he does in this area here where he's guaranteed to get his 51% or better, and this where it's a little iffy, he buses people over to here. That's what he does. It just changes at his whim. It's really extraordinary. It's exactly what the Republicans are doing all over this country. It's the same thing. The same thing. And
they're hiring their own voters.
Well, they're basically making it impossible for there to be free, fair elections. They're making it impossible for a lot of the people who support the Democrats to be able to vote. They've been doing that for the last 20 years, okay? It's getting worse. And it's like, Trump telling Texas, okay, I want 5 more seats, so you have to gerrymander everything. It's why our governor in California is fighting that and saying, come on, there isn't a higher road to take right now. We have to just fight. And we have to fight as they're fighting.
Well, along the same lines, Timea, the Minister of Parliament, spoke eloquently about the tactic that Orban uses to build his support. She says he creates an enemy or a crisis, or both, and then insists that only he can fix it. That sounds very familiar to Trump's.
Yeah.
How did that manifest in Hungary?
Well, in Hungary, he turns everybody into his enemy. First, it was the immigrants, okay? And what was really happening with the immigrants when all the war started in Syria and there were lots of immigrants coming through, they just want to go through. They don't want to stay in Hungary, none of them. They're just going to other places in Europe, which is a lot more hospitable, where they have family. But Orban turned it into that they're invading Hungary. And they want to turn us into, a non-Aryan Christian country. Okay? So he manufactured them as a threat. And so then he manufactured George Soros as the big enemy because he has international money and his open society, and he's funding ideas that are contrary to what, Orban wants to do. And then he made the EU itself into an enemy. Bite the hand that feeds you.
Right.
He did.
Yeah, he takes money, and gives it to the rural areas or wherever he's getting support, but then he complains that the EU is his enemy.
He built his oligarchy through EU money. All right, Hungary is like Russia. Putin built his own oligarchy. So did Orban. I tell that story through telling the story of his high school buddy, Mészáros, who's now the richest man in Hungary. He turned him into a big contractor. All this EU money goes into building stadiums all over the country. It's not just doing schools in the south or fixing things up. Orban created the oligarchs, and then they're completely loyal to him.
In street protests in the film, we see police tear-gassing protesters. Nico is grabbed at one point. But Orban's rule, at least as far as it was portrayed in the film, is almost remarkable for its lack of violence, certainly by comparison to the U.S. How do you see the difference?
Well, I think he is so assured of his control, he doesn't need to do that. Okay, he doesn't need to put his opposition in jail like Putin does. He doesn't need to do any of those. He's had such tight control over everything. It's never been a way that anybody could budge. This time with Tiza, it's the first time that's happening. They have like goon squads in Hungary of very right-wing people who come and beat up the demonstrators, as well as the police and the tear gas, which we get. Everybody gets anywhere when there's huge demonstrations and all the rest of it. But he's been too assured of his power and his ability to maintain it. And Orban really sees himself as an intellectual. He wants to leave a legacy way beyond him. And he has a Danube Institute. It's like the Heritage Foundation, and they're very close together. They work closely together.
As Americans, we're generally not well educated about how the European Union works. But the film, you show several ministers in the European Parliament calling Orban out for anti-democratic policies. Do you think those criticisms make a difference?
Well, of course they do. The problem with the EU is that again, if you go down to the basics of all these institutions, whether it's our country or Hungary's or the EU. When the EU is formed, one of its raison d'etre was to raise up Eastern Europe, okay? So economically, it could be on par with Western Europe. That was its commitment. That's why it gives money to Hungary and gives money to, all the Eastern European countries. Hungary actually gets the most. The other thing that's a problem in the EU is that all of their votes you have to have 100% agreement. Okay, they're actually working at trying to change that now. So what that ended up meaning, no matter what they do, and they take a big step like not cutting off funds to Hungary, which they did, then they had to give a bunch back to him because they needed his vote to help supporting the Ukraine. They needed his vote in NATO to allow Sweden in, and et cetera. Okay, so they're actually trying to change things, but they also have their blinders on. I was at an event in Copenhagen, which had the member of the EU from, Copenhagen there talking with the film. And she pops up and says, well, at least they built some schools. She says, so it is helping people. So it's okay, right?
When the film ends, we see the opposition has suffered worse defeat than they had in the last time around. In his victory speech, Orban names both the Hungarian left and the European Union, and maybe a little bit of Soros, as enemies. Why do you think the opposition strategies haven't worked in a major way?
Well, I've told you that the biggest party is DK, and it's headed by the guy who was prime minister, from 2002 to 2010. And there was lots of problems with that administration, and there was a lot of corruption. And as I said, they were head of the government in 2008 when the economy fell. Okay, it hurt everybody. And he has been the chief opposition leader, and he continued to be so. No matter what people did to say, please step down or whatever, he wouldn't do that, okay? So, I have good friends who voted for Orban in Hungary, and he was telling me that, what's the choice? The opposition is coming up with nobody you really want to vote for. And also, he is benefiting from Orban's family program. I show that in the film, too. That's actually helping a lot of people. But the family program, it depends on your income. You have to be middle-class income, and it's based on your income, your ability to get this family program.
That's the program where if you have 4 or more children, you don't have to pay taxes.
Not for the rest of your life.
Wow.
Yeah, very
That's
German.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We're coming to the end, and are there any questions that I didn't ask, or that there are things that you think people ought to know about the film that you'd like to share?
There's a couple of things. I mean, one of the things I've seen the film function as, which I'm really happy about, it gives people a clarity because it lays out, this is the authoritarian playbook. It looks like this. It goes like this. And they go, that's what's happening here. I see it. And I think it helps people from feeling overwhelmed because they understand there's a whole pattern that's going on. The other thing is it really focuses also on resistance in Hungary, which is incredibly important. And it's certainly, as a message, incredibly important for us in America. That look, if these people in Hungary have been able to really form a culture of resistance, we can do it. And we've actually got potentially much more power than they had in Hungary. We've got our states. They don't have that. We have an opposition party, even though it needs lots of changing, that has as much money as the Republicans do. Okay, we're in a situation where we should be able to overcome this. So we all have to work on it. And I know I take, it helps me, the fact people in Hungary have been doing that. Right. I really admire it a lot.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, it's a great film. And to our listeners, if you want to see the authoritarian playbook unfold over time, check out this film.
And the resistance.
And the resistance, right. I thought the discussion guide that you put together was terrific. It's really good for, using the film to really kind of shape people's or reshape people's perspectives on what's going on.
Absolutely. And it's available to everybody to use.
Right. Well, that's great. All right. Well, thanks so much, Connie. We really enjoyed having you.
Thank you very much, too.
Connie Field's film, Democracy Noir, is currently showing in select theaters in the United States. For a list of screenings or to request a screening in your community, visit clarityfilms.org. There, you'll also find a trailer and an excellent discussion guide for the film. The Making Peace Visible podcast is produced by Andrew Maraskin. The associate producer is Faith McClure. And I'm Jamil Simon. Special thanks this week to Nina Streich, founder of the Global Peace Film Festival, who introduced us to Connie and her powerful film. Making Peace Visible is on YouTube. We've been posting video clips with some of the sharpest insights from our interviews. You can also find full audio episodes there, and it's an easy way to share a link with someone who's new to our podcast. Just type Making Peace Visible in the YouTube search window or follow the link in the show notes. If you're an Instagram user, we're there too, at Making Peace Visible. Thanks for listening.